Welcome to a Neon Jazz interview with Kansas City veteran Hammond B-3 organ man Ken Lovern. He recently spoke with Neon Jazz about a large range of topics, from his beginnings at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, playing with Ida Macbeth at a young age, and all of the gigs that he's been involved with over the years, and the musicians that he's played with, and what's going on now in the Kansas City scene, as well as many more topics. Dig it. So let's go ahead and start off with kind of the alpha of your life. Being born and raised in Kansas City, how did this etch your love of jazz?
You know, I played in jazz band in high school, and even at that time started listening to like Count Basie and some of the artists that had Kansas City careers. And about that same time when I was in high school, I started going out to hear shows locally. Casey Parks and Rec used to do Sunday night jazz concerts, and I heard, Dave Brubeck, Pat Messini, Les McCann. I'm trying to think of some brothers that played that show. But they did these Sunday night shows and had jazz. And got to hear really a lot of jazz greats. And when I was just a little bit older, started to go to clubs like Sideboard and heard Phil Woods and Ahmad Jamal. And so, and all the great local musicians I hear playing. So I guess there was jazz was around, and it was something I was interested in. And so that was sort of the first phase, was just kind of as a listener. And then by the time I was old enough to be in a bar, I started playing jazz gigs. I really wasn't ready to do it, but there was a decent gig scene around. So that was sort of the second way.
Very cool. So what was the first instrument you started playing?
Piano. And I still play piano. I guess I did get my sister and I have a sister who's a couple years older, we did get a little chord organ, was probably the first keyboard that I played, and I didn't play that a ton, but I started taking piano lessons as a kid, probably around 6 or 7.
Good deal. So what was it about the Hammond B-3 that made you gravitate towards that instrument?
Well, and that happened, in a lot of ways later in life that I became so focused on that. I enjoyed, in high school or even really in junior high, listened to a lot of sort of the progressive rock bands, Keith Emerson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, and a lot of it, even when I was like in grade school, listening to Kansas and some of those bands, and almost all those bands, had Hammond organ as a big part of their sound. And then that first Boston record. And so when I, started playing jazz, I noticed that sound. And when I played keyboards a lot, and I would use organ sounds, as a lot of the sounds I would use. But I didn't, and I think the first electronic keyboard I owned was a Yamaha Electrotone organ. That's kind of a compact organ, like a Farfisa or a Vox.
Yeah.
And so I played those, but I got to play Hammond organs at jam sessions. Larry Van Loan used to have his organ at Blaney's, and then later at the Hurricane, they did a Monday night jam for years back in the 80s and 90s. And I would play his organ, and I got to play Everett DeMand's organ once over at the Epicurean. I remember when I was probably 20 years old. That was a long time ago. And so I get to play Hammond organs at jam sessions. But I didn't really get crazy about it until in the mid-90s, organ jazz started to make a little bit of a comeback. I remember seeing Medeski, Martin, and Wood at the Bottleneck in Lawrence, and he was playing Hammond organ and clavinet. And I just got really, something bit me at that time, and I got really fascinated with Hammond organ and just really captivated by the sound. And I just bought one. I found one. And I called my buddy Todd Wilkinson, who had a club, the Drum Room, and he had bought an organ for that. And so he was the only person I knew who bought an organ in recent years. And he sent me to a guy, and I bought an organ. And then, pretty soon after that, I quit my day job, and I just started really being very focused on Hammond organ.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
I tell you what, who do you like to listen to? As a Hammond B-3 player, who do you like to listen to playing that instrument?
Well, there's a lot of greats. And one of the first ones that I listened to a chunk is probably considered the fountainhead of modern jazz organ, and one of the biggest is Jimmy Smith.
Yeah.
And he's certainly amazing. I'm definitely enjoy his stuff. My progression was I went to Jimmy Smith, and then some of the guys like Jack McDuff and Jimmy McGriff, who were contemporaries of him. And then I really got into Larry Young, and he had a little bit more modern approach. He's kind of a post McCoy Tyner kind of organ player.
Sure.
And I really got into him. I like a lot of the contemporary guys, Larry Goldings and Sam Yahel are two of my favorites, and like our group, our OJT group. I mean, we do some of those guys' arrangements of tunes, and some of the originals too. I mean, we borrow heavily from some of those organ jazz contemporary groups, and I mean, I certainly gained a lot by going to hear local organ players. And organ's such a physical instrument. There's so many things you physically manipulate on the organ, the pedals and the drawbars and different ways of approach. It was really helpful for me to see somebody play organ and be like, oh, that's how they're getting that sound.
Yeah.
And so going to hear Everett Devan and Rich Hill and some of those guys, hear them play organ, was very helpful for me, and to see them because, at first I was trying to play all the bass lines on the pedals, and then realized that, okay, it's a combination of using your left hand and using the pedals to get the bass lines to pop. And so hearing local people helped a lot too.
Yeah. Speaking of bass lines, it seems like the bass is one of those instruments that people don't think about a lot, but it really kind of keeps the glue together for a band.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to me the Hammond B-3 is that way. What do you think the role of the Hammond B-3 in a jazz ensemble is?
Well, if you're covering, I mean, in most organ groups, the organ player is covering the bass lines, and that's your number one job. I mean, that becomes the top priority, because if that's not happening, good luck with anything else. And it's different when you're a piano player and you're playing with a bass player. Then the bass player and the drummer kind of have that primary job of keeping the pulse or keeping the quarter note. And yeah, when the organ player takes over that role of the bass player, then that kind of becomes the top priority. And it took me a few years to, I think, kind of even realize the importance of that transition. And then, ever since then, it's just been, that's a big part of it. Is okay, how's it feeling? Is the tempo feeling in the groove? Are we holding it together? Do we get a and that thing of having a nice, relaxed feeling of the pulse, no matter what the tempo is. And I think that's also kind of what drew me into playing organ and really brought my focus into playing organ, was that responsibility for the bass lines and the pulse, in addition to playing chords and melodies, all that other stuff. It just put me right in the moment. I was just right in the moment of playing music, and that's something I really enjoyed.
Right on. So you graduated from the Conservatory of Music at UMKC in '89. Talk to me about your career. If somebody wanted to know what was Ken Lovern's trajectory to today, give me kind of an overview of where you started and where you're at right now.
Well, it was just a little bit before I finished at UMKC. I started playing with the local Kansas City vocalist Ida Macbeth, and that was pretty much a full-time gig. We were playing 15, 20 gigs a month, and so that was my first kind of full-time jazz gig out of college, and that was great. It was a great opportunity for me, and I played keyboards for years. I kind of got out of music for a while. I tried to get out, and I went back to school and went to law school. And then after I graduated and took the bar, passed the bars, if I worked for a judge on the Kansas Court of Appeals for 3 years. And that's actually when I was working that job as a research attorney on the Kansas Court of Appeals. That's when I bought a Hammond organ, and just spent all my spare time getting that together. And about the time I left that job, the Court of Appeals, after 3 years. I worked for a while as an attorney, but I just backslid into playing music. And after a while, I was so focused on playing music, it didn't really make sense to do anything else.
Sure.
And so that was a big sort of like life on the Hammond organ group, and I work with vocals Bouquet Shoals a lot, and we put out a CD 5 or 7 years ago. And I've worked with David Massey some, and recently I started working with a vocalist named Molly Hammer. And so a lot of times my organ jazz group with Brian Baggett and Kevin Frazee, OJT, we'll work with a vocalist, and it's kind of nice because if it's our group doing it, it's not like a pickup band. It's like, we're a band, we know each other, we know what's going to happen. We have a sort of existing rapport about who's going to do what and what needs to be said or not said or whatever. It's just nice to just kind of take that existing group and put it to work with vocalists or horn players or whatever. And that's been a big part of the OJT thing, has been working both as a trio, as an instrumental trio, and then working with other featured acts. I do some other things now. Just a couple of years ago, I started playing accordion, and I play accordion in a Western swing band called Three Trails West.
Cool.
And that's been interesting to learn about Western swing music, which it has a lot. Really, it has a lot in common with the jazz of Count Basie and stuff like that.
Right on. That's great. So, how many albums have you been on? Just kind of give me an overview of how many you've been on.
Well, I haven't counted up recently. We've got for the OJT band, we had our instrumental record, and then we had our instrumental record, and then we had a record we did with Bouquet, and so those two albums came out just a few years apart. There's the most recent thing I've done is a band called Maria the Mexican, and I'm playing Hammond organ on that record a lot. Garrett Nordstrom, kind of the songwriter and producer of that stuff, he really likes the Hammond organ. And one nice thing about that thing is it's coming out on vinyl. We've got vinyl records of that, which is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, we're currently recording a new OJT project with Brian Baggett and Kevin Frazee, and we're doing trying to do pop tunes of the last 20, maybe 30 years, and some real recent, where we take pop tunes and give them an organ jazz treatment.
Very cool.
And so we just started recording that actually a week ago.
Very nice.
And I mean, I could go through a big list of things. The Cosmopolitics is a Lawrence fusion band, and we did a release called Mental Hygiene that came out a few years ago. I was really proud of that record, just in terms of it's kind of modern fusion music, and I like that release a lot. There's been a lot James Wright, that's the Kansas City vocalist. I played on his CD. I play an organ solo on the Chris Calico release. I don't know if you know he is. He's a guy with some Tech Nine. He's kind of Tech Nine's singer guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I played an organ solo on a Chris Calico tune that's what's it called? It's like Notorious, or I'd have to look at the thing to remember the lick, but I've been on a fair amount of recordings over the years. There was a band called the LA Ramblers that was a Lawrence original music band. I'm always kind of excited about the next thing that's happening.
Well, speaking of your trajectory and where you've been, I would think being around Ida Macbeth would have been one of the best learning experiences. What was that like?
Well, it was great, and that band has had such great musicians in it over the years. At the time I auditioned for that band, Steve Cardenas was the guitar player, and Steve's had a pretty incredible career. He's played the Paul Motion for years, and then different people. Steve Milligan was the piano player I replaced, and Steve's had a couple records out on Palmetto, and I think he's still up in Chicago and doing real well. Working with Ida was great. The musicians in the band were really good, top notch. Again, I was kind of green. I was, coming out of UMKC. I had been playing gigs for a while, but I was pretty green. And Ida's great singer. Once she sings a song, it's been sung. You know.
Yeah.
She really gives it all, and so it was a great opportunity to perform and play. You know, we did the Point back then. We did the Point 8 nights a week, and we did Starkers every Sunday night. So it was nice to have steady work and to work up a repertoire. You know, to have tunes that you played over and over again. Forrest Stewart was the bass player then, really great bass player. There's been different other than this guitar player named Paul Evans was the guitar player during a lot of that time. Different drummers. I played with their band right out of college, and then I came back and played with their band again, you know, 12 years later. And then Scotty McBee was doing it, and Forrest was still there. You know, she's worked with some of the same musicians for 30 or 40 years that kind of will filter in and out of her group.
Yeah.
I just think she's a great singer. I think she's one of the best, and I think, you know, she could have had all sorts of success outside of Kansas City, but she always kind of just wanted to stay here.
Good deal.
And, you know, she's not doing as much anymore. I think she's, you know, kind of semi-retired, but it was great to get to play with her and meet a lot of cool people, and, you know, you never know who was going to be in the audience. We had all sorts of celebrities would be in the audience. Barry Gordy or different people would show up at the gig, you know.
That's cool. Well, speaking of celebrities, you played with cats like Les McCann and Kevin Mahogany, Cecil Payne. What's it like to be on stage with those kinds of musicians?
The thing with Kevin was early in his career, he was putting together bands here in Kansas City, and you know, he just had such a great, rich voice, you know, just from the get-go, and then was always very serious about his career. And I think that's something, you know, with a lot of those people who, you know, have successful careers, you know, you can tell how important it is to them, and that they take it, you know, seriously. They're still having fun, but that they're very serious about it, and that it's important, it's a priority, and that we're going to do it the best we can. I mean, I think that's something that's common with all those kind of great musicians. You know, Les McCann was a hoot. He was really, really nice to work with. Eric Alexander actually put together this thing where he was taking Cecil Payne and some other musicians and going around and playing festivals, and we got to play with those guys, and that was amazing. And Eric Alexander had kind of, Cecil Payne had been a mentor of his, and then Eric was kind of paying him back and helping Cecil book gigs and stuff and helping out his career. And that was really cool to see, where Eric Alexander had learned a lot from Cecil Payne and then was, you know, sort of returning the favor by helping Cecil's career to be extended.
So talk to me about the Kansas City scene these days. How is it doing?
It's the best I've seen it in a long time, in recent memory. You know, around 2009, 2010, sort of in the back end of the economic downturn, the gig scene started to, especially the jazz scene, started to wane a little bit. It was sort of suffering, and you know, I noticed, and I do all sorts of gigs, but I noticed I wasn't doing as many jazz gigs, and I noticed there was some downward pressure on the jazz wages, you know. And you know, a couple of years ago, it started, the gig scene started to get better. More people were coming out to hear music, and that helps the clubs to maybe do more shows in a week, have more, you know, do music more nights a week. And about a year ago, John Wayne Scott opened the Green Lady Lounge, and I think that's been so great for the Kansas City jazz scene. And there's a lot of great clubs in town. John is just such a believer in the jazz musicians in Kansas City and what they have to say. You know, we talked about, I've talked to John about how, you know, he doesn't want bands in there every night just playing old jazz tunes, which are great. Everybody loves the old jazz standards and the jazz classics. But but he also thinks there's a place for, you know, original music and jazz. You know, the people in Kansas City that are writing original and having real bands that have a chance to play original music and work up original repertoire. And, you know, he thinks there's an audience for that, and there is. People, you know, when people come to Kansas City, a lot of times they want to hear Kansas City jazz.
Yeah.
And you know, he realizes that, and I think has given, you know, the musicians an opportunity to create something of their own and create something new and really given that a place to grow. And that's been so great for OJT. We've been playing Wednesday nights there, you know, for almost a year, and that's just been so great to be in there on Wednesdays. And, you know, like this new recording we're doing, New Standards. I think we're going to call it New Standards for the Green Lady, where we're taking pop tunes and making them jazz tunes, giving them a jazz treatment.
Cool.
Well, unless you're playing a lot, it's hard to work that stuff up because, you know, the first time you play the arrangement isn't going to be the best way. It's going to be the 20th time you play it.
Yeah.
You know, and things happen and things grow and develop. And being able to have a gig where you can develop that is it's crucial, you know, for a real groove.
Absolutely.
You know, because Kansas City, all jazz musicians and the Kansas City musicians, it's the same with them. You can throw four of them together. They're going to be able to play some standard tunes and do a great job, and it might be super exciting. But there's a different type of expression that comes from having a real band.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, I think the Green Lady's been really good for that because John is a rare club owner that kind of understands it and wants that, you know, wants to give that a shot and see what kind of audience is out there for it. The Broadway Jazz Club just opened in the last few months, and that's a great room. It's a good sounding room. They've done a lot of things right. There's, you know, people that have a lot of experience. Pat Hanrahan, you know, has been involved in managing clubs and was involved in managing Jardines. You know, they know a lot about what it takes and doing it right. And that's nice because a lot of times you get a jazz club owner, it's the first time they've done a music venue, you know, and there's a lot to learn. And so the Broadway Jazz Club, I think, has had a really good start in terms of just hitting the ground running and really doing a lot of things right from the get-go.
You know, it seems to me that the jazz scene has been really rich in the last, you know, number of years, and Jardines was kind of a big blow. It seems like the karma's kind of turned around, and there's a lot of clubs opening up. Even Take 5, I hear, is a great.
It's great.
You know.
That's a great venue, and I've only been out there a couple of times, but Doug and Lori are super supportive of the musicians, you know, and again, they really like the stuff that's happening now. You know, they're super willing to kind of lean forward. It was, you know, a little more modern groups. They're not afraid to have more modern groups. One of the groups I play with does a lot of music by Medeski, Martin, and Wood. And Lori loves that. You know, she likes to have that band out there a lot, you know, and that's awesome. And again, there's, you know, two people that just really, you know, love the music and have a passion for and really supporting the music, you know, because they can have their coffee shop and do fine without having music. And so, you know, you can tell that they really have a passion and a love for having the music in their place. And that, yeah, that's a great venue. I'm playing out there a little bit this spring, and I'm looking forward to it because I've only played there a couple times.
Right on. So you're a career musician. You've had a long career, and you will continue to have a long career. What do you want people to remember you by as you get towards the end of your career? How do you want them to reflect on you and your career?
I'm still trying to think of my career as like the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
You know, I just a lot of that is I want, you know, my peers and my musician friends to remember me as somebody they can count on, you know, to do what I said I was going to do and have integrity and you know, be in a good place and be ready to have fun making good music, you know.
Yeah.
That's always been a lot of what's important to me in being a musician. Is there's so much fun to have with your friends while you're playing music, and I've never understood the other approach where, you know, people act like, you know, sometimes you see musicians that aren't in a good place and they don't want to be there or whatever, and that always seems
Absolutely.
And that's a big thing for me. It's just that, that I want to be remembered as somebody who was, a good side man and a good band leader. I try and do both those things. And being a band leader makes you, I think, a more respectful side band because you realize, a lot of the challenges. I think I'm better at keeping my mouth shut as a side man now than I used to be. And then I get, as far as, I think maybe as far as what people might think, audiences, I guess just I like the idea that we've tried to take maybe tunes that weren't thought of as jazz tunes and give them a jazz treatment.
Yeah.
And I maybe want people to think of that, and just that I've kind of helped keep the organ jazz genre, current. And I'm hoping to turn out some more really good organ jazz recordings and maybe put some out on vinyl. And it'd be great to be remembered for having a good body of recorded work that has good. So much of the organ jazz thing is just the tone of that band with the organ and the guitar and the drums is getting that tone right. And so it would be great to be remembered for having put out a good body of work of great sounding recordings.
Right on. So, what do you live with any regrets?
Well, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the path I took.
Yeah.
So no. I mean, everything I've done. There's, if I had stayed in music and hadn't gone back to school, I maybe would have had a little more energy to put into things at a younger age. But at the time, I wasn't in that great. I almost had to get out of music for a while to really rediscover why I wanted to be in it. And so I don't really have any regrets. Things have taken the path they've taken, and I've learned a lot.
Right on. So, if you could get in the Jazz DeLorean and go back in time and meet one musician from any era, preferably jazz, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I'd probably want to meet Charlie Parker. And why? I guess just to try and get a handle on who he really was and maybe understand him a little bit. That's a tough one. He's certainly, one of the giants. I think the fact that he's from Kansas City is huge. I mean, I feel his presence here, among the musicians and in the scene, and just, he's come to me in some dreams a time or two. So, he's one. It would be more than meet him. I'd almost like to, been able to hear him play.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've met some of my heroes, and it's sometimes kind of awkward, they're people, so sometimes you're trying to talk to them, and they really just want to get a hamburger or something, they want to get out of the club or whatever,
Yeah.
But it would sure be cool to be able to go back in time to, a Kansas City jam session in the late 30s, or somewhere Charlie Parker was sitting in and trying new stuff and seeing if it, seeing the reaction people would have to him, like when he got back from one of his trips to New York or from Woodshed down to Lake of the Ozarks, and came back to a Kansas City jam session and was sitting in on Cherokee or whatever.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. I'd have to say that would be a highlight.
So, what was the last song or album you listened to before we talked today?
Well, the last thing I've been listening to was the newest OJT recording. The latest thing besides us, I think Bobby Broom, Modern Man, and it's got Dr. Lonnie Smith on organ.
Right on.
And they do a version of Layla, the Eric Clapton tune.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of been messing with that and playing that in OJT Summit. I kind of went back to their recording to hear it.
Yeah. So as we kind of get to the end of our interview here, I want to kind of get to the crux of who Ken is. Tell me who you are in the length of one tweet. 144 characters, one sentence. Who are you?
Kansas City born musician, organ, jazz, piano, accordion, father, husband, friend. That's a tough one to try and boil it down. But that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Kansas City organ jazz player, Kansas City jazz musician. I mean, that's a lot. The thing about my career is I also play other styles.
Yeah.
That's almost as a Kansas City musician.
That's perfect. You hit it right on the head. Hey, Ken, again, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Continued success, and hopefully I'll run into you out there at some point, live and in person.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City, giving fans all of that jazz. And thanks to Ken for his time and insight into his craft and for giving us all those B3 notes and that dedication to the Kansas City jazz scene. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or for all things Neon Jazz, visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.